I'm sure it'll be interesting, Roland, to watch the business van at 5 p.m. today. I'm interested in the young lady who is a snail collector.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. I'm not a fan of snails though, but I think because of the nutritious nature that people tend to associate themselves with, and also ways by which they can also create employment opportunities. I think that it's something that we all need to get interested in, and see how for sectional sections of the population we can have people undertake such business.
I just like their innovation.
Yes.
You know, and she's a young woman.
Yes, and especially for a woman young and trying to do that.
Exactly.
It's laudable.
We'll just watch the full story at 5 p.m. Today. But right now, though, we've got a crossover. Opposition party leaders will be in Togo's parliament later today to contribute to a proposal that seeks to put a term limit to the presidency. Yesterday, a planned demonstration by the opposition was called off amid threats public workers would be dismissed. Our colleague Favor Nunu has been in Togo today. He's at the Ghana-Togo border and he joins us live for a conversation. So Favor Nunu, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mama V.
It's good to see you. Can you tell us exactly why the demonstration that was planned yesterday in Togo by the opposition was called off?
Very well. As things usually have it in most democracies, people are allowed to embark on protests and demonstrations. And, well, this was exactly the case of Togo, except, of course, yesterday's demonstration was what the opposition themselves call spontaneous demonstration. It was something that on the spur of the moment they thought we need to hit the streets, and that's because there was going to be an extraordinary session by Parliament. Parliament currently is on recess in Togo, but they were meeting to discuss the budget, and the opposition were earlier informed that there was going to be discussions around the constitutional review and the reforms and the introduction of two-term limits, but government or parliament for some reason just pushed that on the side, and so opposition, out of that misunderstanding or being unhappy about it, decided that we hit the streets and we would go in front of Parliament with all of our supporters and protest that you need to discuss the review of the constitution, as you mentioned last week. And so they did not seek any legal permission to go ahead with this, and so government yesterday came out with a very clear directive that if they find anyone out there on the streets of Togo who appears to be in the mood to protest or is found at the perimeters and premises of the National Assembly, that person would be arrested and they would deal with the person or prosecute the person as law demands. And so that really was the anticlimax for their planned demonstration. They did not have the legal permits to go ahead, and so it was really difficult. Again, security presence was quite massive all across the city. And I've been to Togo a couple of times, but this time around, the pockets of military men and police officials and patrol vehicles going across the town was quite, you know, massive. And so it was difficult for anybody to even use alternative routes or try and then find different ways of protesting in other parts of the city just to make a point if they are not going to be allowed to be at the National Assembly. And then, of course, once government has said that we would arrest and deal with people who protest illegally as law demands, even when legal demonstrations happen, persons are arrested, especially if they go about destroying public property. And so this was a very strong warning, and opposition leaders yesterday had a meeting at the CDPA offices and decided that they will call off the demonstration. Even in front of the offices where the opposition parties, 14 of them in number, were having their meeting, you will tell that meters away from the offices, there were police and military personnel stationed over there who were in their batons and in their helmets and all of that, prepared for action. So that was the reason yesterday's demonstration was actually called off.
But Favor, there's a bit of good news, if you like, because there's a meeting in Togo's parliament today which will have all the opposition leaders present. Can you tell us exactly what will happen there in parliament?
Yes, and so let me pick it up from yesterday. Because the opposition parties were unable to demonstrate, in front of the premises of the National Assembly. What happened was that the leaders marched to Parliament because Parliament is open to civil society, political parties, the general public. They took advantage of that right and were part of Parliament. But we're told that they disrupted the meeting and interfered with proceedings. The discussion by the parliamentarian was supposed to focus on the budget, but they disturbed it and made it impossible for the parliamentary sitting, the extraordinary session, to happen in a manner that was planned. And so, following from that, the leadership in Togo's National Assembly decided to give them a hearing today. And so this morning, they will be going to Parliament. All the leaders of the 14 opposition parties will be meeting the Speaker of Parliament, and they'll be discussing the draft proposal that has been sent from the office of the President, for Nyasingbe, to Parliament for review, following from which they will decide on the 2-term limits that has been introduced. And so the reason for this very meeting today is that the opposition thinks, and also Parliament, in dealing with all of these concerns that they've been raising and all of the calls for a review, are calling for the opposition to be part of the drafting of this proposal, so that if there are parts of it which they are unhappy with, which they feel will empower President Faure Nyasingbe, which they feel would involve some form of trickery of sort, then they would have the opportunity to correct it. And so even before this bill goes before an ordinary session where parliamentarians in general would discuss, they want the opposition leaders to have a look at it and effect the necessary changes, corrections, or proposals that they think are needed in this draft bill before it is moved to Parliament, where an ordinary sitting will happen. And Parliament is currently on recess, but we're told they'll be resuming on September 15th, and that's this coming Friday. And so once that sitting is in session, you would agree with me that this issue, which of course is coming from the office of the President, the proposal I mean, will be fast forwarded. And so Parliament will now discuss it, and the necessary changes that has been made by the opposition parties would go before Parliament, as well as what the President has tabled before them, and the rest of the discussions around how to introduce the 2-term limits will be done on the floor of the House.
In favor of this, Roland, has the current situation affected business around the border, or even to and fro movement of people?
Indeed, you tell that usually in the mornings there's a lot of people who are crossing the border to and fro. Kids going to school from Togo into Ghana, and traders moving from Ghana into Togo to trade. But when you get to the borders in the morning, you realize that only a few people are doing this, which is the daily routine. There's usually heavy traffic, human traffic, but in the past 2 days, it's been very light. And also, when you speak to residents in Togo, they tell you that for the most part of of 1 month and over, since August, they've had difficulty engaging in business in the manner that they wish they could, because every now and then there's a protest. Every now and then military and police officials are cracking the whip on some people. Innocent persons have been picked up or arrested, and so they cannot really go about their ordinary duties and business. So that affects it. But at the Ghana border, yesterday was quite intense, so little business was seen happening. But today, we're seeing that business is picking up and people are beginning to go about their ordinary business deals and responsibilities as they should. One thing also that has come up in our follow-ups and in our discussions in Togo is that there have been issues or stories or cases of missing persons. Government says they've arrested about 80 persons, and these persons were found destroying public property, and whilst they were engaged in demonstrations, they did so in a manner that was unlawful. But residents are saying that they can count up to at least 180 missing persons. These are friends, these are family relations, these are people that live next door, so neighbors, and these persons have been missing. And when I spoke to the opposition leaders, so the national organizer of the ANC, who is Robert Olympio, he tells me that this is nothing new for them in Togo, but they're worried because the numbers are huge. And the problem for them is that these persons who are missing, they do not know whether they are dead or alive. But in order not to create an alarm, they usually would go around the various police stations and various security points where they know these persons may be kept. But they're telling us also that in their next planned demonstration, which will happen sometime next week, they will protest and call for the release of these persons who they know are missing, so that they can come to some consensus as to whether these people are really dead or alive or have been captured and imprisoned or jailed by security officials in Togo.
Favor, we also hear that there are some eminent persons in Togo. Do we know who exactly has come into Togo and what they are there for?
I'm sorry, can you come again, please?
Favor, I just got an information that there are some eminent persons in Togo, and I wonder if you know about this and what they're doing, if there's any information.
Okay, well, the information that we picked up this morning has to do with the fact that some top civil society organizations have also proposed some recommendations which will be presented to government for consideration, and that is against the backdrop of this whole process by the opposition. And so that is what we know. As far as names are concerned and officials or dignitaries from the international community, we cannot confirm that immediately. But we are told that indeed persons have come forward and there are proposals beyond what was sent from the office of the president that has come forward to be considered, all in lieu of getting the Togolese population having their call, which is for 2 term limits to be introduced, and elections and the resignation of Fonya Singbe.
All right. Favor, just before you run off, I mean, you're a Ghanaian journalist, so what's been the reception like for you when you're going about your reporting duties in Togo?
It's been quite intense for a foreign journalist. We're told that there are many journalists who have been stopped at the borders, and we have found our ways of getting into the country and back to be reporting, but it's quite unsafe, so that you feel like there are people watching you. In some of the most hardened towns that we have visited, where we're told that there's massive opposition support, even there we're told that there are spies of sorts who send information to government, and they're very unfriendly to media. And so whenever we try to interview people, they really do not want to speak. If they want to speak, some of them are not even willing to show their faces on camera. But the challenge for us has been trying to be safe, and so we find ways of improvising and mixing up with the general populace, appearing to be Togolese. Going ahead with the cameras is quite difficult, but we still try to do that. We know that there are security checkpoints all around, and so sometimes when we're moving around, you may feel that there's someone following you. And then the military, I should say, around here are quite observant, and so we realized that at some point where we're working, we could tell that 1 or 2 officials were massing up somewhere, and we had to call our driver and relocate and go elsewhere to continue with the stories. And so it's quite difficult. When you speak to journalists from here, some of them will tell you that it's not safe reporting issues just the way they are. You may sometimes have to water it down a bit. If you're quite objective about what you see and report it as such, you may find yourself at the wrong side of a law. And so it's not really easy, but we've been trying to get the public informed as to what exactly has been happening. And then the opposition parties here have also been happy about having international media trying to get as much information as possible. One challenge for us, though, has been trying to get government. We've been speaking to some senior members from here in Togo, trying to negotiate interviews with government, but that has proven very difficult, and we're told it's not very safe. It's a 50-50 deal. It could be a great one where you'll be permitted an interview, or you may find yourself at the wrong side of someone's emotions on an early morning and find yourself locked up somewhere with long questions. So we're quite careful how we go about this, but trying to get you as much information as possible from Togo.
We do appreciate that. But
we do appreciate your presence.
We want you to be safe. But now that you've revealed your strategies to us, I guess you have to go back and re-strategize if you still want to be reporting from there. Favor Nunu, we thank you very much. Stay safe with the entire crew. We'll see you soon back home.
All right. That also shows how independent and safe we are in Ghana, doesn't it?